Galaxy class. Today, this is Derek again. Today I'm going to be making cold udon noodles in a peanut sauce with seitan. It's a recipe I really love. It's inspired by Thai cuisine and some other Southeast Asian type cooking. And this is a recipe that I got from one of the doyens of vegan cooking, Chandra Moskowitz. This is from one of her first cookbooks called Vegan with a Vengeance, a great cookbook that I really love looking at and making recipes from. Highly recommend. This recipe is good for a few reasons. It does have some things that I want to introduce you to. Maybe some people are afraid of something like this, mung bean sprouts, which are pretty easy to find in most supermarkets now. Those are really tasty and very nutritious. And then, in addition to that, we do have our udon noodles, of course. Perhaps you've had those before. But the real star of the show that I want to highlight is seitan, which is often called a meat substitute, despite the fact that it's not really trying to be any kind of meat per se. Seitan's a Chinese product. It's often in supermarkets and that sort of thing with tofu and tempeh, but seitan's not made from soy. Seitan is almost pure wheat gluten. It's made from kind of congealing the gluten left behind in a bread dough and then hydrating it so it becomes this elastic mass. I know it sounds so attractive when I put it that way, but the texture is really great and it has a lot of taste to it too. It does taste a little bit like chicken or lamb when you cook it in certain ways. It definitely has a nice chewy texture that when you saute it, also gets nice crispness on the outside. So this recipe is going to have seitan in it, and you probably heard me say gluten just now, so a friendly reminder that this is not gluten-free. There's no way to have seitan if you are a gluten-free person or cooking for someone with those needs. So keep that in mind, but if you're all good with gluten, then I think you will really enjoy it. So without any further ado, just a few ingredients today. We have the seitan, we have the mung bean sprouts, the udon noodles, a few other vegetables we're going to add here. I have a red bell pepper, I have a seedless cucumber. I'm probably only going to use about half of this. This is huge. I have some garlic, some ginger. We are having a peanut sauce. For that I have smooth peanut butter. I have some coriander seeds that I'm going to grind up that are going to be really great as a base for our sauce. If you just have ground coriander, that's totally fine. I have some black sesame seeds to top at the end. We also need some things like agave nectar, rice vinegar, tamari. I have some olive oil. I might need some salt. Actually, no, I don't think I do need salt. And then you're welcome to add sriracha if you have sriracha as well. Sriracha fits in really well here. So without any further ado, I will start prepping. One thing I'll mention is that I've already started boiling a large pot of water for our noodles. I'm going to cook those according to the package directions, but in the meantime, I'm going to work on preparing everything else. Okay, so I've done some prep here. I am ready to start my peanut sauce. I'm going to turn the heat on this small saucepan on. I'm going to put like medium-high. I'm going to add just under a tablespoon of olive oil. And the first things to go in are going to be our garlic and ginger, which you can see I have about the same amount of each. I finely chopped the garlic and I grated this ginger, but you could also just do a fine chop of it with a knife. We want about the same quantity. It's going to be about 2 tablespoons each. This is 2 cloves of garlic. I am saving 1 other clove for later with the seitan. I still have yet to get to these 2. That's something I'll do pretty soon. I have opened up the seitan. You can see this is what it looks like after you've removed the packaging. The one I bought comes in strips already, but you might have to just do some careful knife work to break it down. And then the other thing I've done here is I've crushed my coriander seeds, which are really, really aromatic and are gonna add so much flavor to the sauce. Again, coriander seeds are great if you can crush them. Otherwise, if you just have ground coriander, that's fine too. So, give this another moment. My water is still getting to a boil for the udon noodles. I'm not too worried about that. So I'm putting in those 2 tablespoons of garlic and 2 tablespoons of ginger and the coriander seeds, which that was 2 teaspoons of coriander seeds that I crushed. And I had a mortar and pestle on hand, but use whatever you have. If you have a spice grinder, great, or you can do some tricks with a knife or a blunt object. Great. Okay, so this is going to get really aromatic for about a minute or 2. Actually, I'm going to turn the heat down just a little. Want to watch for burning here. So we're going to activate these 3 ingredients in the oil. It should just take about a minute. The next thing we're going to add is a cup of water. Let me grab that. Okay, it's alright if it's a little clumpy. Do make sure to keep stirring though to prevent burning. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on. I'm going to add my cup of water. And I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of the tamari right now, or whatever soy sauce that you have. As always, tamari is a super helpful ingredient for adding salt and an umami. And I'll give that a good mix. And now we just want to get this to a boil before we add our peanut butter. Might creep the heat up just a little. In the meantime, let me measure out the peanut butter we're going to be adding. So again, this is creamy peanut butter. It's definitely better to use a smoother creamy rather than the other kinds out there, a crunchy. We're going to need 2/3 of a cup of this peanut butter. And you don't have to be super precise because it's going to be hard to measure out anyway. This is nearly to a boil. Okay, so we've just reached that simmer, and I'm going to start adding the peanut butter. So it's going to be 2/3 of a cup. There's half of it. Okay, and there's the other half. So now we're just going to whisk this in until the peanut butter really combines and breaks down. And be careful for splashing here. Okay, you can see it's already breaking down pretty fast. We're looking for a good combine here, so let's see. As smooth as we can get it. Wow, alright, looking good. So now it's starting to burn just a little bit. I'm going to turn the heat down. We're basically done. We're going to add two more ingredients here. And that's going to be our rice vinegar for some acidity and some agave nectar for some sweetness. So the rice vinegar, we're going to do 3 tablespoons. And we're going to do 2 tablespoons of the agave nectar. This is also where you would add the sriracha if you're using, about 1 tablespoon or to taste. I'm going to give that another little stir. But our sauce is done. So we're going to take it off the heat. And we're going to, before our recipe is finished, ideally, this will get back down to room temperature. I'm just going to set it aside over here. I'm going to check in on the noodles and get ready for the seitan, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, we're back. I've left my peanut sauce to rest, and you can see maybe from this rising steam that my pot of boiling water has become just that. It's become a pot of boiling water. So now I'm ready to cook my udon noodles. Udon noodles can vary based on what brand you buy, on how long to cook or how to cook them. These we're going to boil for 7 minutes. I'm just following the package instructions. And I'm going to cook all 3 bundles. There are udon noodles that are pre-made and are quite good. They will have a much different texture, but these I think will do really well for what we're doing. These are round udon, if that matters. Okay, great. So I'm going to set a timer for 7 minutes. In the meantime, you can see over here I've prepped most of my vegetables. I've julienned this cold cucumber, ideally seedless. This one has maybe a little bit of seeds in it. And I've also julienned my red bell pepper. One of the things I love about this recipe is, in addition to all the different flavors and textures, there's also a diversity of temperatures. So we're going to have these noodles, or ultimately we're going to get them cold after they're cooked. These are cold. Our peanut sauce is going to be room temperature, and our seitan, which we're just about ready to brown right now, is going to be hot, or warm at least. So we're going to get that combination of 3 different kind of levels of temperature in the dish as well. My noodles are still cooking. I'm ready to brown my seitan. I've had this heat up and I've added about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And I'm on like a medium-high heat now. The seitan should be all set to go in. But again, wait to hear some sound there. Maybe needs another moment. I should also mention that obviously we're going to cook this seitan for texture because it does add a lot to have a really nice seared outside to it. But it doesn't need to be cooked. It's already ready to eat from the package. You don't have to worry about any kind of poisoning or anything like that. So we're just going to sear it for about 5 to 7 minutes until it's brown on all sides, and then we're going to add a few more things before we're going to wrap up our dish, I believe. All right, let's add the rest. And try to stir as often as you can, but it's okay to let it rest for a little while too, to really get a sear. Okay, so we'll check in again in about 5 minutes when our seitan should be ready and our noodles should be done. Okay, so a quick update. The udon noodles finished, and I drained them in a colander here in the sink. And then I really spray them down with cold water. You really want to cut that heat off as soon as you can. And you want, obviously, all the water to drain off as well, so I'm going to let that sit for another moment. In the meantime, our seitan has browned really nicely. It's probably been about 7 or 8 minutes. It's going to depend on how much you use and how you've cut it, and again, your stove. This recipe does call for 2 cups of seitan, which I use about a pound. That's 2 of those packaged as you'd find at the store. They're usually sold in 8 ounces. So we're just about done. We're going to add there's like a final step here where we're going to add our last clove of garlic, which I've minced. I'm just going to stir that for about a minute. Or maybe even somewhat less, if your pan's been getting a little hot. And then to add some additional salty flavor to the seitan, we're just going to finish it with about 2 teaspoons of tamari. So you can pour it right over. We're going to let it cook for maybe 10 more seconds and then really remove from heat. Give it a good stir. Okay. Great. So we have all of our various elements ready, and I'll be back in just a moment for plating. Alright, so we're ready to plate our udon noodles and seitan. So I have a bowl here. Something with a raised edge is nice. I'm going to start with a nice amount of the udon noodles on the bottom. Maybe a wee bit more. Next is going to be some of the peanut sauce, which I'm going to just try to be gentle about. Okay, and you can kind of add to taste there. Oop, a little bit of dripping. I'm going to add our cut vegetables now and the bean sprouts. So first I'll add some cucumber here. I'll add our red bell pepper. And then about a handful of the bean sprouts, which don't need to be prepared at all. Just open the bag. Hopefully they haven't turned at all. These look good. And you can use as many of these as you'd like, and it depends on how many you're eating with. I'm going to add some of the seitan next, which is still pretty warm, which is great. And then I'm going to finish with 2 things. First, some of the sesame seeds. Mostly black, there might be a few white ones in there as well. And then something I forgot to mention at the top of the show, another good thing to finish with are some chopped scallions, which I will scatter over the top. All right, and that is, aside from those few splotches, we'll ignore those, but that's our finished dish, our cold udon noodles in peanut sauce with seitan. Enjoy.